Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, which is on Get Set for GDPR with Bytes and Microsoft. Today we have Richard Horowitz here from Bytes, who's giving a brief introduction to the GDPR, what it means for your business and how we can possibly help here at Bytes. We will then be joined by Harry West from Microsoft, who will be discussing the Microsoft solutions that are available, which will enable you to prepare for the May 2018 deadline. I'm just going to run through some quick housekeeping with you before we start. During the webinar you will be muted, but you can submit questions at any time via the questions box on the right hand side of your screen. There will be a Q&A session at the end to answer any submitted questions, so feel free to submit at any time. The webinar will be recorded and we'll post this out to you in the next 24 hours. Please, if you could complete the critique form at the end of the webinar, then that would be much appreciated. I'm just going to hand you over to Richard from Bytes, who's just going to take on the next part of the webinar. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So you'll be pleased to hear that I'm not a GDPR specialist and won't be going into a real detail of the legal ramifications of GDPR, but what I'm going to cover off is specifically a few salient points to what GDPR means, what it means to your organisation, and a couple of things that you'll have to start looking at now before passing over to Harry from Microsoft, who will talk about how Microsoft are able to provide the technologies, services and solutions that they offer that will help get you on the path to gaining GDPR compliance. So GDPR, standing for the General Data Protection Regulation, it comes into effect on the 25th of May 2018, and it replaces the current Data Protection Act that we've got in existence at the moment. It's applying to all EU citizens, but any business in the UK needs to continue to prepare for GDPR regardless of what it means for us under Brexit. We will all, unfortunately, not be leaving the EU before the 25th of May 2018, so we're going to have to start ensuring that we are meeting the regulations. And really it's about protecting individuals' personal data. This will have a massive implication to every business, ours included, specifically when we start looking at the potential scary fines that the ICO are announcing, which as it stands is either maximum fine of 4% of your global revenue, so not just based in country, it will be globally what your revenue is, or a maximum fine of £20 million, whichever is greater. So scary part, but what it does allow is the regulation focuses on the importance of having a strong information security strategy. If we look specifically, I guess, in the news recently, as of last week, the ransomware attack to WannaCrypt, it just highlights the necessities of having a good information security strategy, and that links heavily back into GDPR. It really does show how important it is for you guys as an organisation to be running the latest patched and supported operating systems within your environment. And I guess there are 5 key things that we see that an information security strategy will provide you. 1, sleeping at night. It's the right thing to do. There's a duty of care that you guys have to protect your clients' information and your staff's personal data. We're also seeing an increase on client requirements, so your customers, clients demonstrating that you are working to best practice, that you have the right securities in place, the risks and the policies, I should say, in place. Also, there's a lot of legislation that have heavy focuses towards risk and compliance, so ensuring you have a strong security strategy will allow you to be in compliance of those new regulations. Oh, sorry. 4 as well, around marketing. So actually by demonstrating and going through some of the key standards, so such things like ISO 27001, having those banners available to your business that you are in compliance, or indeed if you're looking to, from a marketing point of view on your websites, having those certifications. One that we strongly recommend customers to look into is Cyber Essentials. It's a self-assessing regulation that the government brought out. It costs you £300. You get a nice shiny logo to put on your website or any documentation. It's a great thing to have from a marketing exercise, and most importantly, the fifth piece about having the information security strategy, it's part of the GDPR. It's a compulsory piece of work that you'll need to do. So just at a glance, what are the key things for IT and the business to consider? So I'm just highlighting a few of those, one being privacy by design and by default. So businesses will now find themselves subject to a specific obligation to consider data privacy at the initial design stages of any project, as well as throughout the life cycle of that data processing. Really important for you guys to understand what you're doing now as a business and ensuring that they meets the new GDPR regulations. The right to erasure and be forgotten. This enables an individual to request the deletion or removal of any personal data. If there's no compelling reason for a company to store this, you need to be able to search for that data, extract it, delete it upon any data subject access request. It's the timely breach notification. So if for any reason your business does get breached, you have to declare that to the ISO within 72 hours. So ensuring that you understand when you've got a breach is going to be really key. And then probably one of the most important pieces is the data protection impact assessment. What this means is you need to understand where your data is, who has access to the data, which systems it's on, where is the data stored, what's the retention policy of that data, to map out what potential risks you have for any of your clients' personal data. So that's at a high level, kind of some of the burning things that are occurring within GDPR. What I'll do is pass over to Harry, and then once Harry's finished his, I'll talk a little bit around how Bytes are helping customers through getting on the path of GDPR compliance. Harry, over to you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Good morning all, and thank you very much for attending today's webinar. Just to kind of set the scene, one of the things around GDPR is that it's not a badge, it's not an accreditation, and it's not a certification. It's a regulation, it's a law, it's a state of being. And with that in mind, we need to be cognizant of the fact, with the recent risks and things like that, and recent breaches in the public domain, that replacing one bit of technology with a different piece of technology doesn't mean that you're compliant. It takes into account the people, the processes, and the technology in order that you can create a robust cybersecurity strategy that is compliant with the general data protection regulations. So as we look at, well, from a Microsoft standpoint, as you've probably all seen this many a time as part of our stable kind of content, but one of the things that really resonates for me personally is the fact that from a Microsoft perspective, it is our mission to empower every person and every business on the planet to achieve more. And with the proliferation of cloud, the underpinning foundations to what Microsoft are doing is entirely dependent on privacy and trust. Now, if we look at some events in the market, obviously there was the breaches that were publicized over the weekend, but looking at it at more of a global scale, we are in turbulent times. There's been 2 billion records compromised in the last 12 months. And on average, it takes 140 days or more for an organization to identify that they have been breached from the point at which their environment was infiltrated. And ultimately, this translates into a significant cost to an organization per breach, which on average it equates to circa $50 million. But that's just the financial side. What about the operational, the brand, and the environmental factors that are taken into account from there? From Microsoft's perspective, we look at this holistically. We look at developing a holistic approach to security in light of the regulations and the standards available today, but also looking to the future with GDPR. And we achieve this by in three key areas. In the first instance, we have our platform, which it comprises of a integrated identity framework that is applicable to any device, whether desktop, laptop, mobile, tablets, across multiple different vendor operating systems. We then look at the applications and the data that is created, shared or consumed on that variety of devices, and we ensure that we have a resilient and robust infrastructure underpinning everything. And as part of that, we have incorporated intelligence into every aspect and every facet of our technology portfolio, ranging from the desktop to the data center, that looks at everything from potential malware attacks through to phishing, denial of service attacks, user logins, and we apply machine learning algorithms to those behaviors to ensure that we create the highest level of security available. And then, of course, key parts of our business is our partner relationships and our partnership approach, whether that's with organizations like Bytes and our partner ecosystem, through to industry alliances with the plethora of different industry bodies that exist today. But we also work very closely and strategically with government organizations across all of the 180 geographies that we have a presence in, to ensure that we have compliance and certification, and we can consult and advise on best practices to ensure the continued security of our customers' environments. And one of the things that stands out for me is a kind of message that's come down from Satya, in the business and users are going to embrace technology only if they trust it. And the thing is that what's really prominent in the market, or from our point of view, is the fact that Microsoft is the industry leader in privacy and security, with extensive expertise, complying with complex regulations around the world. And it's not just me saying that, it's not even just Satya saying that. We have over 50 accreditations looking from a regional level, an industrial level, a US governmental level, but also at a global scale for all of our trusted cloud platforms, including Office 365, Azure, Dynamics, etc. But that's all great. But looking to the future and May next year, and the looming kind of regulations that are coming down from the EU, I just wanted to kind of level the playing field around what GDPR is about and who's impacted. The short answer to that is everybody. Ultimately, the General Data Protection Regulation imposes new rules on organizations that offer goods and services to people in the EU, or collect and analyze data tied to EU residents, no matter where they are. So it could be you're in on holiday in Australia, for argument's sake, and you sign up to the Australian airport or the Sydney airport guest Wi-Fi, and you enter in your details. As an EU resident and as an EU citizen, the Sydney airport is obliged to comply with GDPR. They have to enhance the personal privacy rights that are available to EU residents. We have to increase the duty of care and protection to ensure they're protecting data. And as has been touched on already, there is a mandatory requirement for reporting breaches, which is a step change from where we are today. But also the impact of that is that we need to ensure that wherever our data is, whatever systems, people, processes that are accessing those data, we have a robust reporting mechanism through which we can identify the right people are accessing the right data at the right time, but conversely, ensuring that we identify the wrong people who are accessing the wrong data at the wrong time as well. Because ultimately the consequence of this is there are significant penalties for non-compliance. And as far as Microsoft are concerned, we believe that GDPR is an important step forward for clarifying the regulations and the privacy rights that we have as an individual, but also the structure of those regulations ensures that there's more clarity around what we have to comply with as a business. So what are the kind of key areas that we're looking at? The key changes within GDPR look at personal privacy, ensuring that individuals have the right to access their personal data, and to the point before around guest Wi-Fi or marketing activity, it's ensuring that we have the right processes in place for that. We also need to ensure that we can correct errors in their personal data, and we provide our consumers and our customers the opportunity to erase their personal data if required. And ultimately, we need to ensure that we have the right controls and notifications in place to protect the personal data using appropriate security practices, and have those transparent policies and processes in place so that there is clear notification of that data is being collected, and outline the purposes and the use case why that data is being collected and what it's going to be used for. And one of the areas that is often overlooked as well is that is the understanding of our users and our business around our security processes, particularly in light of GDPR, and having the right, ensuring that we have the right training in place, we have an audit, an up-to-date catalogue of data policies, and we ensure that we have empowered the right individual to operate as the data protection officer within the organization. And one of the areas where we have this kind of, as the markets have evolved, as business has evolved, we are more connected to other organizations through partnerships or relationships, etc. And we need to ensure that we create and manage those vendor contracts as part of that. So how do you get started? Now, in the first instance, you need to get counsel. You need to understand the ins and outs of GDPR as a regulation. It's not, as I say, it's not it's not a tick list. It's not a catalogue of controls like an ISO 27001 or a PCI DSS compliance. It's a law. And with that, you need to make sure that you have the right legal counsel to ensure, to evaluate the risk and the gaps that exist in your organization, in order that you can then go through this iterative process of preparing for GDPR. Now, as far as we're concerned, we look at this in 4 key areas. In the first instance, we look at the discovery stage. We need to identify what personal data you have and where it resides, and the kind of things that are in scope of that, things like names, email addresses, social media posts, location, bank details is an obvious one. But then there's things like MAC addresses, cookies, IP addresses that could ultimately be reverse engineered and associated to an individual. We need to identify where that data is stored, whether it's in email, documents, databases, etc. And one of my favorite kind of examples of this is our HR processes. So typically we work with recruitment agencies, and we have a raft of personal identifiable information about prospective candidates in the form of CVs. Now, what process do you have in place to protect that data? Would you feel comfortable and confident standing up in a court of law saying and say that I know exactly where that data is, who has access to it, how it's controlled, and how we're protecting it? And in order that we can facilitate that, Microsoft has a wide variety of solutions that can support that, and some of them are highlighted here. And in particular, the one that's one of my personal favorites is the Azure Data Catalog. Because this allows you to connect your various different data sources to a single entity in order that you can identify what personal identifiable information you currently have. But then as we look into the productivity world with our Office suite or our SharePoint, document sharing, etc., etc., Office and Office 365 and the new capabilities available with Windows 10 also help enable that discovery phase. The next stage is, once we've identified what data we have, we need to put processes in place to manage that data. We need to look at the governance policies that are in place today where for that data, whether it's at rest, in process, in transit, is it in storage or is it archived? Is it in a physical disk in a storage facility, for example? Do you know who's got access to that? And as part of that, we also need to look at how we classify that data and who is allowed to access it, who owns the data, who are the custodians. And things like role-based access control as your information protection enable you to control, restrict, and report on the data that's being used across your business. And then we need to protect, of course. We need to establish the security controls to prevent, detect, and respond to vulnerabilities and data breaches across all facets of the technology landscape, whether it's the data center through to the computers that sit on your desks, and have the appropriate mechanisms in place to detect and respond to those breaches through systems monitoring, planned response. And one of the big topics following the WannaCrypt kind of risk is, was that data actually backed up? Because that forms part of the not just the breach identification, but how we recover from those breaches as well. And there's a wide variety of tools available, as you can see on here, to protect that environment. And then finally, reporting. As I say, do not underestimate the significance of the reporting aspect. We need to ensure that we have the right records to for processing, the classification of personal data. Who are the third parties that access your data? Do you work with a marketing agency, for example, that you share personal identifiable information with as part of your marketing campaigns? And how are you putting in controls to secure that and protect it in line with GDPR? And then there's incorporating the right tools that apply speed and automation to the collection of that data, but incorporate heuristic behavior analysis and machine learning to automate a large proportion of those risks, but also to predict what may happen in the future as the landscape evolves. So ultimately what we're talking about is GDPR compliance requires a secure productive enterprise. It requires an end-to-end left-to-right view of your technology, your people, and your processes to ensure that you remain compliant with GDPR. And as secure productive enterprise kind of comes into play, as I say, this whole desktop to data center landscape suddenly comes to life as we look at our productivity tools, desktop environment, server environment, cloud infrastructure, and data tool sets as well. And Microsoft have invested, invest over $1 billion a year in cybersecurity and maintaining the security of our customer environments across our variety of cloud platforms, but also play back the findings that we have through our intelligent networks to ensure that you have the most up-to-date security or view of the security landscape in your environment. And here's just a snapshot of some of the capabilities that are available for you today. Because once we've established that secure productive enterprise, we've protected the organization and the data and the people that work with us. We provide a collaborative and productive workspace to embrace diverse work styles, which can incorporate mobility, collaboration, cross-agency work, etc., which is underpinned by a robust intelligence platform that provides insights to drive faster and better business decisions, but also support the reporting requirements within GDPR. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you found that useful.
Thanks, Harry. Hopefully, Harry's given a good overview to the guys that are on the webinar around what Microsoft are doing and how their technologies can help. Important, I guess, to note that Microsoft are keen for customers to explore the technologies and solutions and services that they offer. And specifically, Harry talked about a lot of functionality within Office 365, Windows, and the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite, I should say. There are promotion offers at the moment that Microsoft have to allow customers who are running any of the legacy Office 365 subscriptions to migrate to some of the more feature-rich offerings, both from an Office 365 perspective, but also from the Secure Productive for Enterprise as well. If you do have any questions on this, or you are running any of those cloud subscription licenses at the moment, please do get in contact with your Bytes account manager. They'll be able to talk to you about what that is and what that looks like for you guys. So thank you very much, Harry. So back over to me. There's been a lot of talking about the impacts on what GDPR means for businesses, and it can be quite a scary concept to actually look at. Well, how do we get started? What do? We know that the date's not moving. And there's been a lot of talk that we hear from our customers where they're having internal conversations about the legal ramifications, but it's really now getting the businesses to actually start doing something. We've seen a big gap in that. Like I said, May 25th is not moving, it's fast approaching. So Bytes as an organisation, we came up with a framework called GDPR Essentials, which is a prescribed methodology and a business framework to get you on the road to GDPR compliance. What we do is we run through with your business. Actually, before I go into that, I would like to point out for everyone who is on an IT background or works in IT, just to be clear, GDPR should not be treated by your business as an IT project. I'm hoping there might be a couple of yays from some of the guys from IT. This is a business, should be a business-led conversation. Like I said, our framework and methodology brings that to light to get you started on that. We do this in four stages. First stage being to educate. This is where we'll come together with your key business stakeholders to start talking about GDPR, the impacts to your business, what things you'll have to do to ensure that you get buy-in, that the business is going to be able to be on board. They're going to provide budgets where necessary and resources to help get you on the path of GDPR compliance. That then filters down into a GDPR assessment workshop where the roles and responsibility be filtered down from the key stakeholders to the guys that are going to be responsible for owning the assessment process. We go into a lot more detail here about what they need to do, the objectives they need to uncover, and provide documentation and templates that will get them started, so they know where to look, where to go, where to start, etc. That leads very quickly into discover phase. As I mentioned at the start, one of the key drivers is you need to do an impact assessment. We provide documentation that will show you exactly how to lay this out, and it will be at this point where you start looking for where is your data held, who's got access to it, the retention policies, to build up that gap analysis of where you may have any gaps within your infrastructure or through third-party data processors, etc. This allows you to quickly move on to the plan stage, to start looking at this from a risk mitigation point of view and start making changes to those gaps, start analysing, do you need to start upgrading and looking at the different technologies that Harry talked about within the Secure Productive Enterprise suite that will give you better reporting, will give you better understanding of where your data is. All these documentations, all this work and planning is detailed within a lot of templates and documents so that you actually now can get started in doing so. It's important that you're able to demonstrate back to the ICO that you have a plan in place, that you have an understanding of what your risks are, and even if you do have risks that you can't mitigate for whatever reason, this is to bring to the surface that you're aware of them and the business is aware of them, and you're doing all you can to mitigate those, but it may not be financially feasible to do so. The ICO want to see you demonstrating that you have a knowledge of what your business risks are, and that it is aware and you're trying to do something about it. It isn't about that you couldn't say to the ICO that you weren't aware of something. That just doesn't work with the ICO. They want you to be aware of every kind of risk associated within your business. Moves on to the final part of our GDPR Essentials framework, which is, it's not just about getting the GDPR compliance, it's about now how do you maintain that? What's the best practice to ensuring that you're doing the right things with any new projects, the ongoing reviews of your policies, where your data is, etc., as well as providing documents and templates, as we talked about, if there were to be a breach, having a breach response template that details exactly all the information that the ICO would require, so that you can surface that within the 72-hour period. We build this in for you so that, like I said, you've got as many tools, templates and work associated to your for your business, so that, like I said, the GDPR compliance becomes a lot easier to aim towards and maintain. Essentially, as I mentioned, we provide a lot of documentation and templates for you as part of our GDPR Essential service. Highlighted now are some of those pieces. Like I said, that will include the key thing around data protection impact assessment, data flow mapping, looking at from when as part of GDPR you need to ensure you have a data protection officer, reports that he can utilize and manage to understand the risks associated within the business. This is just a handful of some of the templates and documentation that we offer. There's about 24 documents and templates that we provide you as part of our GDPR Essentials package. In terms of, as I mentioned, around the maintaining of GDPR compliance, this is where we'll additionally provide those templates, procedures, etc., to keep you on the path of GDPR compliance. So, like I mentioned, the breach notification template, that's all documented for you. It's about giving you guys back time to go and implement the changes you need to make, rather than reinventing the wheel and writing something yourselves. So as I talked about, we call this service GDPR Essentials, and for anyone on the webinar, we're offering a free 1-hour telephone consultation with one of our GDPR specialists to discuss about where you are today, what impacts you've got within the business, and how you can get started on this. And like I said, if it's something of interest, we can then start moving forwards with this service to get you on the path to GDPR compliance. So just like to say, I think that brings us to the end of our presentation, and we move on to some Q&A. But I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time. It's been great to talk to you about from a Bytes point of view what we're doing to help customers, but also from a Microsoft perspective. So we've had a couple of questions come through, so I'm just going to read through. I think the first question we had was from Matthew Parks, who's talking about the other bills and regulations that go against the privacy mandated by GDPR. So this is a really important piece. So GDPR is all about how you protect us as individuals, our personal data. However, what GDPR isn't there to do is to trump any other regulation that may be mandated, such as, risks, whether that be criminal risks, whether that be financial regulations, whatever it may be. GDPR gets trumped by anything that requires you to keep someone's data because of a specific reason. If I take, for example, from a finance point of view, any kind of financial transaction which is related to an individual within your business, that you are obliged to keep that data for X period of time. If anyone was to ask you to delete that, the regulation that trumps GDPR would come into effect, and you have the ability to go back and say, no, we are keeping this data because of these reasons. I would say, though, that does add more complexities for you as an organization, purely because of how are you as a business able to distinguish between what is really personal data or personal transaction data, whatever it may be, versus what data you must keep hold of. How do you mandate that you must keep that data? And that, again, feeds back into some of the technologies and solutions that Harry was talking about from Microsoft point of view. And again, we can cover those things on a follow-up if you would like to. Question as well, maybe for Harry, for yourself to answer, if you can come back off mute. But the question is, how would Microsoft handle a crypto outbreak in a data center? Is the data center content backed up offline, or is it just replicated to other data centers?
So ultimately, it'll depend on the architecture of the solution. The short answer is both. So it can be backed up offline, it can be backed up and replicated to other data centers as well. So ultimately, it depends on how what your environment looks like, how you want it all setting up, and how that applies to the policies and procedures you put in place. I think one of the things to kind of reiterate is that obviously as a technology vendor we have a suite of a wide variety of tools available, but the GDPR piece is very much around the policy and process, which is then underpinned by the technology. So my advice would be look at the architecture that you're trying to deploy, and then we can then you can enable the appropriate solutions within the environment.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Harry. We've also got another question from Hassan Matin, possibly one for me to answer. Does GDPR apply to email archiving tools such as Barracuda? Yes, GDPR applies to every third-party cloud solution provider that you work with. Barracuda will have to be responsible for demonstrating compliance. You must be able to work with a third-party provider who can fulfill certain criteria, such as being able to allow you to search across the data sources, being able to extract that data, and also being able to delete any data if a subject access request comes in. So it's really important for organizations to work through all their current third-party contracts to ensure that any party they work with, where that party is responsible for data, personal data, that they conform and apply to the GDPR regulation. Again, we can cover this off in more detail if you'd like an hour's consultation, as I mentioned at the end of the presentation. Final question as well is, do we get a copy of the presentation? Absolutely. This will be circulated towards in the next 24 hours by our marketing team. They'll get you a copy of the presentation, and like I said, if you could as well, just make sure you do the feedback forms. That'd be much appreciated. So like I said, if there are any other questions that haven't been asked, our team can come back to you and follow up. And at that point, that's most of the questions answered. We'd really like to thank you very much for your time this morning. I hope this has been really useful, and Harry, thank you very much from a Microsoft perspective, and that's been really interesting to hear about what Microsoft are doing. And with that, we'll end the webinar. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day.